All right, it's Jeep Update 69, and I wish I was a little more excited about Jeep Update 69, but that kind of sounded bad, didn't it? But Jeep Update 69 is going to be about changing out the inner and outer seal on the rear passenger side axle shaft. So to give you a little bit of history on this, and I'll keep this part brief because I want to get into this. I had some work done at a shop. I had my gears changed, the front and rear gears. And in the process of doing that, I put in the one-piece upgraded axle shafts, and I paid the shop to do that. Well, ever since I got the Jeep back, the rear differential, the front differential has always leaked, and the passenger side axle seal has always leaked as well. And again, before the engine swap kind of blended in with every other leak I had on the Jeep, so I knew I would get to it eventually. And, you know, kind of looking back, I should have done this before I did all this work to the engine and swap the motor and everything, because then I wouldn't have to be doing these little annoying tasks. Anyways, it's always leaked. My buddy Shane and I changed out the front and rear differential gaskets, learned that there was nothing but RTV on there, and that's why those were leaking. And I'm sure there's a story that this axle seal is going to tell, because it was all done by the same shop and the same guy. So this time I'm definitely doing this myself. I have never pulled an axle before and never done the seals, so there's not a lot of good content out there on this on YouTube. I've looked, there's a couple of videos that kind of walk you through it, but it's going to be interesting. So let's get into it and let's see if we can get this thing changed out. All right, so I got the tire off, and you can see how it's been running down the inside of the tire, pulling up. And let me show you the puddle over here. So there's the puddle that it made on the garage floor, right next to the floor jack. That's where the tire was. I just moved the Jeep over to the middle of the garage to work on it. All right, so I got the tire off, obviously, and now the drum. You can see all that gear oil in the drum. And so this is what you're looking at now. And if you have the one-piece, if you have the two-piece axle shafts, this is going to look a little bit different. And these are the one-piece axle shafts. And my understanding is you don't have to take apart your brakes. But you just have to unhook your brake line, and then you go in here, and I don't know if this will show up, but there's nuts and bolts that hold the axle shaft in, and they're 9/16, and you got to get one in here and one on the back, and I think there's 4 or 5 of them. I'll know here in just a minute, but once you undo those and unhook your brake line, this axle shaft should pull out with the backing plate attached to it. So one of the things to make note of is that when you do this, you have to have, you can't have it in gear, and you certainly can't have on your parking brake. And you can see my drive shaft spinning there. So I've got mine chalked with some fire logs, and then I've got my floor jack in the middle, and I've got 2 jack stands on it right here, just extra safety in case something does happen, but it should be pretty secure. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to undo these 4 or 5 bolts, and I'll determine, well, let me go get the seals, and the seal will tell me how many bolts it has. All right, so once we get the axle shaft out, there's going to be 2 seals, and there's an inner and an outer. And this is the inner seal, AMC 20, one-piece inner axle. You can see the part number right there, and basic seal. That's what that looks like. Now the outer seal looks a little bit different, and that's got 5 bolts to take off, because this goes, my understanding is this goes on here somehow, kind of like that, on the outer side of the axle. Behind here, well, actually I can kind of see it, it's right there. So it's the outer seal. I'll show it to you in a little more detail once we get this axle shaft out. So these are the 2 seals that I want to replace. I think to get to this one, I have to deal with bearings that have been pressed on. So not sure, because I've not done this and I don't know what it looks like in there. So let's get these 5 bolts undone, 5 nuts and bolts undone, and see if we can slide this axle out. All right, so I got my brake line undone, and I took out only 4 bolts, and on the seal, I swear to you, there was 5. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is there's a bearing pressed on there, and so the furthest I can get this out with the backing plate is about right there, because the emergency brake line is stopping us from going all the way out. So I thought I was going to be able to get away with not disassembling the drum brake, but I think I'm going to have to, at least to the point where I can get the emergency brake cable disconnected. I think that's the only way I can get it out. All right, so I'm going to accept the fact that I'm going to take apart these drum brakes so I can get my emergency brake cable off and out of the backing plate, and then once I do that, that whole axle will slide right out. All right, so here's the axle shaft, and I finally got this out. Now you can see a little bit better what's going on. You can see the bearing there, and then I think it's just a bearing stop right there that's pressed onto that axle shaft. And looking in here, there's a race that I pulled out that just goes right in here, and that's what that bearing rides in, and that just came right out. Well, it did a second ago. Now it wants to catch. And then inside there, you can see the inner seal. So this is a spacer that's supposed to be pressed up against this seal so that it does not do that. See how that bearing moves around, or I'm sorry, the seal moves around like that? That is an improperly seated seal. And again, this spacer is supposed to be pushed in to where it's tied up against that seal, because my understanding is there's a ridge in there that the seal rests on. And the reason that I've had a leak, I think, is because it's been allowed to do this, and it's not forming a good seal because it's not pushed up tight against that ridge. So basically what that is to me is sloppy craftsmanship. So to drive this in to the point where the seal still moves around like that, to me is just poor work, poor quality work. And honestly, that's kind of been my experiences at almost every shop I've been to. All right, so now that I got this out, the fun part is getting the that spacer out and getting that seal out so we can put new stuff in. Now I do have a seal puller kit with a slide hammer handle, or a slide hammer, and I'm going to test that thing out. It's brand new. I bought it kind of specifically for this job, but I also know that my pinions up there in my differentials, same guy put those in when he did the gears, and they're both leaking as well. So I've had to go back after this guy and correct all of the mistakes. So I invested in the seal puller for that reason, for those reasons. All right, we are attempting to get this thing out. This is my new seal puller. We're getting there. You guys remember Matt?
American.
Yeah, he sensed the Jeep in need, man, and he came over to help me.
JD squared.
Yeah, man. And we got moral support back here.
Hello, hello.
Yep, that's Jared. Okay, so here we go. Not moving yet. Oh! There she is, boys. Wow. That was awesome. And there you can see that ridge where that seal.
Oh, that was.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, there was no seal around that.
No seal at all. No chance of a seal.
Jeez. So it wasn't leaking there. It was leaking out here.
On the edges. Yep. It wasn't seated properly at all. Yep. And see, that's the ridge that I read or I saw in the other videos.
There you go.
And there it's a little bit tighter,
seal.
right?
Yep.
So all we're gonna do is drive that in until it hits that ridge, right?
Yep.
Okay. Beer break. All right, so in both the videos I've seen, definitely recommends to put some Permatex around that blue seal. And so we're just putting a little bit on, and then we're gonna drive that thing in. There it is.
Yep, there it is.
All right.
That's how a seal should look.
That is how it... So there's the old seal again. Totally not doing its job. Whoever put that in, it was either the old seal, probably the original seal, and he reused it, or he just beat the hell out of it putting it in. That one's seated in there really nice. All right, so if it goes like this, we just confirm that in the instructions for this kit. And if it goes like this, it was in backwards. No, it wasn't.
That's how it should go.
No,
right
it
there.
was right.
Okay.
Okay, he got that part right. Okay. All right, we got some grease on that bearing and the new seal in. We decided not to put the, or not to change the outer seal because this one was so bad. We think this is going to solve the problem. So we're going to go ahead and slide this thing in.
I didn't say anything.
All right, the reassembly begins. Let's get it back together. All right, so I know you guys just saw us put this thing back in, but as good of a mechanic as Matt is, this piece here, this is a race. And he left it out. And I'm loving every minute of it because this is the stuff I do. I take things apart, put them back together 2-3 times, and he's never done that until now. So for the second time, brother, here's your race.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, man. Awesome. All right, so I got the tires back on. I got them torqued down, the lug nuts, and so far so good. I got no leak, and that was the intended result. All right, so a couple things that help make this job go quicker, and these are things that I bought on Amazon. This is a gear wrench slide hammer puller kit, and it was 80 bucks on Amazon. So not the cheapest kit in the world, but I will tell you, worth its weight in gold. I have rented all of these tools in here many times from O'Reilly's, and with the pinion seals that I have coming up and the work on the Camaro, I just thought it was time to invest in my own. And this is a real nice kit, kind of real nice carrying case. And this piece right here made short work of that seal and that seal retainer. And that's a slide hammer, obviously, and then you've got a puller there, and it just worked flawlessly. It was just awesome. So well worth it. Like I said, it is a little pricey. 41700D is the kit. And again, Amazon, 80 bucks. So another thing that I bought that made this job go a lot quicker was this ABN race and seal driver set. Now this I got also on Amazon, made in China. It's definitely a cheap set, and I try to buy, made in the USA where I can. But for 26 bucks, not a bad deal. These are all aluminum discs, so you won't damage the seals as you're driving them in. It's also designed to set races in place. That's why it's got these tapered ends. And then you've got your little aluminum handle, very lightweight, and even after beating on it, driving that seal in, no damage at all. So again, these things, not requirements, certainly, but really made the job easier. And since I know I have a lot more seals and bearings in my near future, I went ahead and invested in these two these two toolkits, and honestly, I do not regret it at all. All right, so that wraps up Jeep Update 69 and the axle seal replacement. Now we only ended up replacing the inner axle seal because the inner axle seal was in such poor condition. That had to be the reason that the axle was leaking. So again, I don't know if he reused the original axle, because even in the two-piece axle to one-piece axle conversion, the diameter of the axle shaft does not change, so it's the same seal for either kit. At least that's my understanding. So I'm thinking he just put the old seal back in there, the one that probably been in the Jeep for since 1983. But no way to tell. But either way, we got it fixed and had a lot of fun doing it. Matt came by with his buddy Jared, and I know Jared as well. And I can tell you, I don't know what it is about three grown men working on a Jeep, but the conversations go downhill real quick, and I just had to do a ton of editing to clean this video up so I could feel good about posting it. So hope you enjoyed it. Appreciate the support, and thanks for watching.